Until now, Blender has not really offered a way for you to create real feathers with all the fibers, all the barbs, all the shafts. The only way you could replicate this is to fake it using texture card. So that works great, but if you're looking to get really high fidelity feather, there was really no way for you to work with this in a very optimal and artistic way. Until the coming of Geometry Node, of course, it offers a lot of tools to make this possible. And that said, if you have the copy of Hairbrake, I have added a fader system into Hairbrake to allow you to be able to create feathers very easily, like you used to with the Hairbrake workflow, which is the Blender workflow. The way you do it is you click on plus to add new hair, and you can grab your add. So we can grab the add brush and just place hair, and you can just groom this how you would normally groom it, and then you can go ahead and add your feathers. So we'll talk about all these parameters in a bit, but let's just go let's just kind of get started first. So you can scale everything, and there we go, we have our feathers. You can increase the viewport count, and I went into this with optimization in mind. When working with a bunch of feathers that you'll be instancing a lot, you need to make sure it's optimized enough to be actually usable. So that's one thing that was quite important approaching this. So a couple of things before you can use this. First of all, you can get this version of Hairbrake with the feather update on Blender Market. Note it's only usable for Blender 4.1. So if you have Blender 4.1, it will be easier for you to integrate this into your workflow. You just uninstall the previous Hairbrake and install the new Hairbrake. It's quite defined, the version of Hairbrake you can download, and once you download it, make sure you uninstall your current version of Hairbrake, restart Blender, and before you reinstall the new one, and then you're good to go. It's just the whole system. So what we're going to be doing in this tutorial, we're going to be kind of understanding and seeing how the feather system works, so that you will leave by the end of it feeling very confident to attempt to use it. So before we go into styling, let's talk about some important optimization approaches when using this feather. So add a new hair system, and let's say you want to kind of generate a bunch of feathers. I'm going to increase the length slightly and the density slightly. So let's say this is the amount of hair curve we want to turn into feathers. So you could go in right now and start grooming it, or you could just want to add your feathers already. So to do that, you just like you would normally do with Hairbrake, you go to the modifier. Under effects, you want to just add the feathers. So once you add the feathers, it adds it into your scene. By default, this is actually set to 0.8. So this is because I've been working with this file already. But by default, you should get like it in 0.8. So I can actually show you, so you see that. I don't want to restart the tutorial again. I kind of like the intro for this particular take of this video, so that's why we'll have to do it real time, no editing. Okay, so you generate it, and you can add as much as you want and apply. So if you go to the modifier and add feather, so like I said, it's going to be in 0.8. So that's one optimization checklist, optimization helper. So you're going to start from a very small amount. This will not affect your render, so when you hit render, you're going to get the full feathers. If you want this optimized version to be what you render, you can just check on affect render. So that's one optimization. You also have the amount of feather barbs you see in the viewport. That's this basically the barbs of the feather. So you have both the viewport and the render parameter. So by default, obviously this is set to like 25. So you have a very little amount in the viewport, and in render you can have a higher amount. Okay, and then other viewport optimization. Right now the barb seems quite straight, but it's actually, it can get a bit more coily. So if we increase this, not the shaft, so we want to go to the the feather count. So if you increase this, you can see it becomes more coily. So by default it's set to 0.2 for more optimization settings, so there's no need for lots of details there. But when you render it, you can see more details. Okay, so how would you go about grooming this if you are working with lots and more? Um, you can use this reduce viewport count to help, but if you need to see all the feathers, you can reduce this to like 10, and you'll be able to see all the feathers, where you can go in and start combing your hair. So your feathers, as you can see, it's quite fast and quite optimized. And the great thing is it works, the feathers are rendered with real hair. These are not like geometries for optimization purposes, and it also works with the hair radius. So if I would do that, let's increase the size of the barbs. Don't worry, we'll go through all these parameters in a bit. Okay, shaft radius. So except the shaft radius is actual geometry, but the rest of it is like hair strand. Wait, where was that again? Okay, so the shaft radius is actual geometry, but the barbs, like I said, it's hair strand. So you can come here and reduce the size, and you can taper it. You can reduce kind of how it tapers to give you real control over like how everything ends up looking. So this is just the base, like understanding the optimization workflow. So importantly, what to bear in mind is the reduce the kind of count of the children in the scene if not necessary. You also take note of the feather count in the viewport, and also the feather point count. So leaving it at 2, which is the lowest you can go, is perfect. It makes everything quite usable, that even if we have this and we have this set to 50, you can still work. It's quite still usable. It's just grooming is going to become a bit slow. So for that, you can just reduce the count and it becomes fast. Okay, so now let's go more in depth in how we can actually work with this and how you can understand the whole system. So it just does it not only ships with like the node, also ships with like a very cool material, or at least parameters that you can use to set up your own custom, basically any type of feather look you want to kind of create. Okay, so let's go into all the settings one after the other. So we can add new hair. This time we're gonna add a simple, just a couple of hair strands. Okay, and if we add the feather, so these are the default settings you would see. So we don't need to reduce it for now since they're just quite little. We'll also increase the count to 160. This can go like basically anything you want. And then, okay, so for the settings, depending on the size of your strand, it might be bigger, as the barbs might look bigger or smaller. To adjust that, you can come here under the uniform scale and increase them, so it's going to uniformly scale everything. Okay, one thing you can do in case you're quite intimidated by all the parameters here, the reason for that is just because Fabric UI is not yet designed to take in like the exact look of Blender's geometry node. But if you come in the geometry node, it's a bit more organized and labeled with names and spacing to make it look more user friendly. So with the next Fabric update, this is what we'll take into account so that we support drop downs, collapsible menus, and like more kind of customization so that everything looks clean and nice. Okay, so here under the, where was I? So yeah, the uniform scale can allow you kind of scale everything at once. Then you have uniform shape, so you can actually cycle through several shapes. You can also create your own custom shapes for the feathers if you want. So these are just uniform parameters, but you then have asymmetric parameters. So with this, you can customize like just the left part to get a certain look for the feather. You can customize the right part to get a certain look for the feathers. And like I said, you can even customize this even some more. You can use the loosen shape. So by default, it's set to this, but if you reduce the scale to like 1, and let's go with something bolder, or better still, we can scale it out. So you can play with the texture size to get even more kind of weird shapes, or you can use it to just kind of break each head strands nicely. Okay, so let's go through every single settings and see what they do. We've covered the reduce viewport feather object and the affect render. The next is the feather count viewport render. This is the count of this, like we said earlier. If this is set to 2, it becomes even more curvy. So by default, it's set to 2. Shaft viewport count. Okay, this is for the, so for example, if we go in and comb this. So by the way, you might say, how would the feathers tell the particular direction you combine it? So it knows once you start combing towards any direction, it automatically faces that direction. So based on the direction you brush the hair, it's going to automatically face that direction. So that's pretty cool. So for the shaft viewport count, so it's set to 3 now. If we come down here and scale it up, where is that? Lot of parameters, honestly, can get a bit daunting sometimes. I'm looking for the roots, the scale for the shaft. Okay, the shaft radius. So if we scale this up slightly, if you look here, you can see the curve, how curved this is, but we need this to, if you increase this, then you're basically like adding some subdivisions onto the curve to copy the full shape. But sometimes it might not be necessary if you like have like 1,000 feathers. So like the accuracy of the shaft is not really important. So that's why this option is there, so you can use it to optimize things if necessary. Even the resolution of the sphere, so it's set to 1 by default, but you can use this to kind of control that. So by default it's set to 1, and then the shaft radius, basically scale it so it tapers from 0 to 1. Okay, so now let's go into like some effects which you can apply. So the first one is the clump. So you can add, you can like basically clump the feathers. together. Okay, this is the lowest it can go. The more hair you add, and so depending on what you're trying to get, if you need the hair to be a bit more jagged, then this would come in handy. Uh, then you have root noise. These are for when you want to kind of apply baby hair. So if we increase the root noise factor, so we set this like 0.4. If you're not seeing anything, you want to play with the range. So reduce the factor slightly, and then I think we'll increase this count so we kind of see some smoothness. So the subdivisions kind of affect everything. So if you want to kind of get that root hair effect, and you can kind of propagate it to affect everything. You can also create like cool looking feathers with this. Anyways, yeah, that's that. Okay, we then have noise. This noise is applied to everything, so you can add like a noise if you wanna have like a fuzzy feather, or if you want to break up the feathers some more. There are a couple of ways you can break up the feathers, but this is one way. You can kind of blow it up. You can make it not happen to the inner hair, but just the outer hair to create this type of effect. Okay, so that's the noise. So the other thing is the randomness probability. So let's say we add more hair, more feathers, sorry. And then you want to, obviously they all look the same. And when you have like thousands of feathers, it becomes boring and not interesting when they are the same. So you want to kind of control the probability of some being smaller and some being bigger. So this is set to default 0 by default, so you will have no probability. But if you start changing this value, you can see we are introducing some randomness to the scale of the hair. And you can also control the randomness scale with the uniform effect. So if you come here, so we have the uniform scale, so you can also scale the random if you want it to be bigger or more bigger. Okay, so this is good, so it stands out. You also have the randomness of the shape. So you can make some feathers have random shapes. I think there's probably an issue. It should kind of affect more than it is, which I will look into. But yeah, that's what it does. It kind of uses probability to randomly select it, and you can determine like how much that is happening. So I'm gonna have to fix this. I'll just write it down. Fix random shapes. Okay, and then that's that for the probability. So you can set this to 0, so no probability happening there. Then you have the start, so you can determine when the feather starts, and so depending on the effect you're trying to go for. And then for the customization, so you have the uniform settings here that we've gone through. Well, then you can customize the shape basically. So several hairs can have the left and right will have different shapes, and you can play with their value on how big they are. So you have like an item of 8 different feathers that I think will probably cover most of the stuff you'll be doing. But obviously you can customize this, as I said. To kind of create an effect. So most of the settings here are the same. You can also control the randomness for the probability. So if we have like probability scale here, you can control like the left and right of the probability itself. Okay, so the next one is the rip. So this is another way we can break up the feathers, kind of add like some tearing effect in the feathers. So if you go lower, it kind of does lots of damage. That's the wrong one. This one, rape. If you go higher, it does some more damage to it, but later it does little damage. And this also uses randomness, so they will not have the same tearing or have like different tearing patterns. So that introduces some randomness. You can also this is also another parameter for the range. So you can determine how much it affects, because with most feathers, sometimes the rib doesn't affect this area of the feather. So the range will help you determine that it starts from somewhere. It starts from the middle and not the tip. So if we play with the rib, you can see it doesn't affect the tip area. What next? So we've kind of roughly looked at the losing. With this losing, you can add more tier, and you can play with the distortion amount, like I showed you earlier. If this is set to like 1. Oh, this is different. Okay, yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, this is what I was showing you earlier. You kind of play with it. So most times you'll probably not have to use all of this, except you're kind of concept arting and you want to play with different parameters, but probably not all. And it's easy to understand. I try to name them as obvious as possible. So if you're having problem with one, you can just expand on it, and the name kind of roughly explains it. So this is basically doing the same thing. And yeah, so what about in a case where you want to have more custom controls? So for that, you can go into the node editor. Could be a bit daunting, but it's okay. You just need to look for a particular thing. So you want to just get this particular node 0016, and when you go inside, you will see this value switch. Each of this curve, if we come here, let's say this is for this is for, wait, let's see. I mean, we'll determine it either way. But if you get this particular node, so you want to get the node connected to the count. Let's see it again. Oh, sorry. So it's going to be in this blue colored frame. This two blue colored frame. And it's the one connected to this fall off color ramp. And if you go inside in this value switch, you'll see a bunch of curves. And if you're kind of moving it and it's not working, the reason is because it needs to be on the right count. But if you want to kind of create your own custom one, let's actually do that rather than all of this magic stuff. Um, Firstly, you just want to add like a color ramp, or let's say float, float curve. Okay, make sure it's not connected to anything. So we first connect this input here into the value. Okay, and then we connect this into this, and also this. Okay, so once you do this, now you can move your curve and start working. It's not working. Uh, okay, let's don't do that. uh, I'll just go back a bit. The tutorial is almost over. This is just the last part, just to kind of solidify everything. So you can control things if you need to. What numbers do we have? Okay, so shape 2. So in this float curve, we want to get the second curve as well. And we can come here and kind of customize the shape. So this is what I was trying to do. So yeah, that's how you customize it. You want to kind of take note of it. So this is the left and this is the right. So I'm going to obviously I learned from this and kind of see what I will have to improve. I will name things a bit more better before updating it again. And yes, that will be it for this tutorial. I hope it was informative. Yeah, so get your copy of Hebrick, play with this. I forgot one important thing before we go. Yeah, this is a bit right. Let's look at the materials first before I think that's pretty important. So add new hair curve. Oh. Okay, and let's add feather. Okay, let's just work with this. So like I said, it ships with a particular material called feather mat. And you want to take note of the material here. Depending if you have multiple systems with different materials, so you want to appropriately change the material you make the right changes to, but it's going to ship with this material. So what does this material come with? Let's go into that material. So this is feather mat. It comes with this node tree, and the node tree comes with both EV render and Cycles renders, because EV doesn't support rendering with like principal hair shader, but Cycles support that. So this was output to Cycles, or this is output to EV. So depending on your workflow, this should be suitable for you. It just has a basic material setup. So this is the default shader you get. If let's increase this slightly. Okay. So this is the default material you should get. And then you have this multiply. This adds like an glowy effect. So if it's like a black color, you can really see it. The kind of iridescence material. So you can use this to add that kind of bad color, and this controls the noise size. So it's a bit more like a bird, kind of shimmering. That's what this parameter does. Then we have a couple of other parameters. The first one is the mask for the right side, mask for the left side. You can control the intensity. You have randomness for the feathers. Then you have the shaft, so you can add material specifically for that. Then you have the feather length to add like a nice fall off effect. Then you have the feather center. You can control like if you need a color there. And yeah, that's it. This will help you kind of customize your material. It's always going to be there anytime you add this. Then we have this cool one. This allows you to UV paint, and so we can add an image, but so you can actually paint the colors for the feather. To make that work, let's actually do a quick test. So let's add bunch of hairs and use the comb to make them lie down. And we want to give them different colors at different points. Okay. So we come here and let's go into texture paint modes, grab the draw, create a new texture. So you can call this no, not call it. Just give it like a dark brown material. Okay, and we can go ahead and start painting. So before we paint it, we can select this and select that material we created. Let's see if we calculate. So without it, you will see nothing. But when you have this, it should work. Also, so the reason for that is it's connecting, not connecting to Eevee. So make sure it's connecting to Eevee since we're in Eevee. Then we can select this, go into the texture paint mode, and start painting. So where the texture root is, that's where it's going to source its color from. So this is set to pink, set to green, red. So you kind of get the gist. It allows you to sample the UVs from the surface and actually work with it. Then in combination with, let's say we add like a color mix, and then use the left trim as an alpha, and let's say give it a black color, and use a multiply, matte, not to multiply, and increase the effect so you can see it. And we can use like a matte add with the left side of the rim, combine them, and there you go, we have like a nice rim color. So it's this is kind of like a nice building block where you can probably get the center, use it as a factor. I will set this to probably black. You can combine different techniques to be able to get textures. You can this works with like a texture. You can get like a very nice texture. I think I'm enjoying this too much. I'll delete this for now so I don't have that issue. So like a nice Verina texture, we can use the source as the UV map. And let's see. Okay, that's not working, so we'll probably have to use generate. And we can mix this with the Verina as a factor. A critical effect. So, like I said, it offers lots of possibilities for you to kind of take your time and set up your hair color. If you need dot, you can use noise, play with color ramp, and set up. You kind of get the gist. Yeah. So, bye bye again. This is the second goodbye. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye bye, guys. Talk to you soon.